Welcome, everyone. It's the Crypto Lark. I'm very excited to have the chance today to talk with Charles from Genesis Block. Charles, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure indeed. Well, for anyone who doesn't know about Genesis Block, they actually write one of my kind of favorite newsletters that I get. It's just like awesome, concise, like what are the main stories happening in crypto today. So there's a link down below if you guys want to get signed up for that newsletter. It's very informative and I personally like it. And then I just thought, hey, you know what? I'm gonna write to you guys and see if you want to come on and talk about all the stuff going on in crypto. And so I'm really glad that you did agree to come on, and we're gonna be talking about what's going on in the markets, of course, some of the biggest news stories, but also kind of the East Asian view on what's happening. And as we all know, the East Asian markets are incredibly important. Now, Charles, you're based in Hong Kong, so you've got a great view on kind of what's going on. You're right in the center of the action there. But I think we should start off with kind of the biggest stories of the day. Bitcoin's over $6,000. Woo!
Mm.
What are your thoughts? I think we're going to hold
Let me
above
give
that.
some quick background on what we
Yep.
do first. So we got set up in the middle of 2017. Our founders were in the mining space since 2012, and we saw a big gap, at least in Hong Kong, where there wasn't a kind of crypto community where people like OGs or even new entrants, they had nowhere to go to learn about the whole blockchain space. So we actually set up a Bitcoin center around July of 17, and we started hosting events, 2 to 3 every week. It could be anything from inviting in like experts. It could have been education like driven events, panels, you name it, right? And once the bull market took off, hundreds and hundreds of projects were reaching out, trying to market themselves in Hong Kong. So obviously we did a lot of filtering there, but we've kind of become the go-to kind of community when projects outside of Hong Kong want to get to know what's going on here. And obviously this is like, you can't really make money off events. So just having their background in mining, they felt that it was a good idea to set up an OTC desk where, retail, family offices, institutions, doesn't really matter. The whole point is we want to create accessibility and just put liquidity into the Hong Kong market. So yeah, I mean, I joined a couple months after the company was set up. My background is in traditional equities, but I feel, after doing some reading on what Bitcoin is and how blockchain works, I saw huge value in this whole concept of decentralization, censorship resistance. I'm kind of in the camp where a very like favored towards BTC just because of those properties. However, in terms of BTC becoming money, I try to keep a more realistic view. And as store of value, I think there's massive upside already, and there'll be even more upside as the technology kind of develops. Yeah.
We're in super early days still with crypto. It's I look at the value of the technology, the value of it as a store of value, actually, and I look at
Mm,
you try and take these macro views of the picture, and I look and say, okay, well, $6,000 is what the market's deciding it's worth today, right? It was
mm,
worth less
mm,
previously
mm,
and worth more previously, but I look at the actual value of that as a long term asset as being worth way more than $6,000, personally.
yeah. You can't put a number on financial freedom, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good one.
So
I'm gonna quote that. That's great.
so all the commentary that my opinions, it could be short-term views, but just keep in mind that as an underlying like assumption that I am very bullish, at least on Bitcoin. Yeah.
Now, one of the other big news stories, obviously, price being about $6,000, that's very exciting. But Binance was hacked yesterday for 7,000 Bitcoin, which is,
Yep.
$40 million is not a small chunk of money by any means. I mean, it's a very profitable and successful business, so they can absorb that. And obviously, they had their SAFU fund and all these things. But what are your
Yeah.
kind of thoughts on the exchange hack and the way the market reacted and the way the community reacted to it?
Yeah. So it was very surprising. The number one exchange getting hacked for not a small amount of money. I understand users' funds. Any damages will be covered by the exchange, and we know for sure they have more than enough money to cover that, right? However, like the meaning of this is very scary because it's about trust, and um, like the security on the technical side. If Binance can't get it right, then who can, right? This is the kind of red flag that I think was there. The market took a dip, but bounced back very quickly, and obviously overnight, now we're above 6K. So it's confusing. It's very confusing. Not really sure. I mean, obviously, it means that people took the dip as a buying opportunity. People that missed out on, like I guess the guys who missed out on the early 5,000 kind of levels, think that, oh, we'll take this news and buy it up. But fundamentally speaking, I would have expected a much bigger correction. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it didn't. I think it really speaks to the strength of the market overall that this news comes out. The biggest exchange gets hacked and they're going to go into maintenance for a week, right? So
Yeah.
no deposits or withdrawals on Binance for a week. And instead of, the market reacting negatively, I mean, he said there's, a very
Yeah.
short-term downside, but that was only, an hour or a couple hours. And then boom, we're,
Yeah.
we're blasting up over 6,000.
There's a couple implications here. So, firstly, normally when there's a hack, you have to think about the overhang. Hackers normally they want to dump whatever they can steal, right? When it comes to like altcoins, even if you steal like $100,000 worth, this can be actually like impactful in the markets. 7,000 BTC, I would say is still sizable. If they dump that over like a very short period of time, it should be negative on the markets. However, people are tracking this. There's a lot of people, like I guess companies on Twitter that are openly sharing where these coins are going, to what mixers, what exchanges. I think the exchanges are doing a great job coordinating to ensure that these bad actors cannot actually liquidate back into USD. Yeah, the second implication is liquidity. So a lot of people rely on Binance. Like coins move in and out all the time. Even big desks, I assume they have plenty of coins there. So when they freeze deposits and withdrawals for a week, which is their estimate, we don't actually know how long it's going to be. I expect some players to face some liquidity problems, and that's also another reason you kind of have to be careful to chase this.
That's it. We could definitely see some liquidity drying up anyway. I mean, we see how much Bitcoin is actually on Binance. We understand how liquid the markets are across the markets and how big Binance is in that role. So it'd be really interesting to see how this week actually plays out in terms of will it just push the price higher? And then once that does open up in 7 days, then will all this sort of stored up sell volume then come back onto the markets with people saying, oh gosh, it's up to 6,500, 6,700 now. Now we're going to sell because we've been locked up for a week or whatever it might be. So be interesting to see that play out. Now, this year has seen some super interesting stories happening. I mean, there's so much being built. There's so much infrastructure happening. So many big players coming in. So what do you see as being a couple of the key stories that we've seen affecting the overall crypto markets over, 2019 so far?
Yeah, so 2019 is really about two main stories. Institutional interest. So how do they, what infrastructure is out there where institutions can start feeling comfortable in trading crypto and storing crypto, and so on. The second theme is STOs, right? So I want to go, I want to kind of put STOs out of the way just because I don't think it's that big of a deal, at least for this year. Because for me, it felt like STOs was a big focus because there wasn't a whole lot to discuss in the blockchain space as a whole. Like it was, to me, everyone kind of, all the advisory firms that all of a sudden are shifting towards STO advisory, it just kind of felt like, with ICOs being dead, they're looking for new revenue streams. And fundamentally speaking, it's going to take a while before we see actual liquidity in these markets. Where do they trade? What are the lockups? Who can actually access this, this kind of allocation? So many limitations, and also a massive bottleneck from the regulatory side. So if you're an STO issued in Hong Kong, does that mean can European investors take allocation? Or how does it work in terms of mixing these jurisdictions? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to the STO market, and now that the ICO has come back via the IEO, we're seeing obviously a lot of wealth being generated via that currently. So that's
Mm.
kind of shaken up. The STO is going to save us. Well, actually, now the IEO is here, and it's providing all
Yeah.
this liquidity and market growth and excitement around the markets again.
Yeah. So IEOs, I think it will be a lot more short-lived than the ICO run, just because like people get smarter. They know what's going on now. They know that okay, if you get allocation, um, for sure you should be selling this stuff. You can look at all the charts since BTT, which was the first on Binance. The pricing doesn't hold up, um, and yeah, no, like I would not recommend anybody to be picking these up after the IEO, unless you've done a lot of due diligence on the project itself. Perhaps you know the team directly. If that's not the case, like there's no trade there. Yeah.
Yeah, that exchange listing day. We've seen lots of hype. We've seen lots of profits being made, but I'm sure we also see lots of people losing a lot of money because they're just chasing the hype. They're not
Mm.
actually really thinking about what they're getting into. And I feel like a lot of people buy them just because, oh, it's the Binance IEO and
Yeah.
it's going to go up. So I'm just going to get it regardless. I don't care what it is. I don't care what the project is, what it does, who the team is, who the investors are, none of that stuff. I'm just going to get it because it's going to be on Binance and I think I'll make a lot of money. So I'll buy it the second it gets on the market and then, double my money in 20 minutes. And it doesn't always
Yeah.
work like that.
So um, yeah, I mean it can be profitable, but it's very risky. Uh, but I mean I think in general the allocations have shrunk a lot. So something like Matic, which is only like $300 per head. I mean you can kind of gamble for fun, but it's like it only work for a certain period of time, and then people will learn and move on.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And it'll only work for a certain class of investors. If you're a multi-million-dollar investor, you're probably not going to even waste your time trying to get a $300
Exactly.
allocation for an
Yeah.
IEO, right?
Yeah.
So,
So back to the institutional side. Yeah, Fidelity Digital Assets. It's a different company. Custody's been running, and now there's obviously very positive news that they're going to offer kind of like brokerage services to select clients. So I think this is in line with market expectations. I wouldn't expect this news alone to create such a bull market. And actually, you could almost speculate that big institutions have interest, like they have incentive to put down the prices as this product launches, just so that all these big players get a good chance to enter. The guys that have no exposure up till now.
yep.
But that's just pure speculation. Um, so like it's positive, but I think just because Fidelity is launching this, it's not going to just drive massive flows into the market. It'll be very calculated and careful, especially with like institutions around like pensions and very conservative kind of groups. They'll probably be doing like test trades. They might still not be allowed to actually trade the stuff or hold it. It's going to take time, but infrastructure moving in the right direction is a very positive sign for the, I guess, longer term. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to be an overnight gold rush for people like Fidelity. They're
Mm.
doing a long-term play here. They want to bring these clients in over the next couple of years, establish trust,
Mm.
establish trusted relationships, establish that trusted custody, and say, hey, we're the ones you can
Yeah.
trust in this crazy crypto land. So I think that's going to be
Mm.
really important for that organization moving forward. And it will invite
Mm.
in hundreds of billions, trillions potentially over the years to
Yeah.
come. But that's not going to happen tomorrow. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
market buy $1 trillion. That'd be great. Be great. I'd love it, but probably not going to happen. Now,
Yeah.
look, you're based in East Asia, in Hong Kong, and you're at this epicenter of all of these interesting different markets. And so, what do we see happening? What are the big trends right now in the OTC markets in Hong Kong? I mean, what are investors coming after? Are they
Mm.
only asking for Bitcoin? Are they gobbling up altcoins on the OTC desks? Are they looking for, private sale allocations on the OTC markets? So what are your customers
Mm.
looking for? And then what's that conversation back with them? What kind of advice are you giving to your customers coming to you on the OTC desks?
Yeah. So Hong Kong is it's not a great place for like developers. Most of the people involved in the crypto space are either, like they're either running investment firms or they're on the advisory side. So our clientele based out of Hong Kong, mostly they're interested in speculation, where the market's going. And of course, back when ICOs were hot, it was all about sharing deals, right? Hey, I have this. If I share with you, next time you get that, you can share with me. And there was a, like now that it's all over, I guess we can talk about it more, but like syndication was everywhere. And the biggest names like that you may have heard of, like everyone was involved in this, right? And it's just because like it's a space that's not regulated. You do it because you can.
Yep.
We also get good color from mainland China and also Korea. So these are kind of two markets where there's not actually a lot of OTC players, just because with the currency involved, there are a lot of capital kind of restrictions, and it's very gray area stuff. But fortunately for us, like we found methods where we can very like safely transact with people in these countries, and it's a very different appetite, right? So in mainland China, a lot of the demand is actually regarding trying to get their capital out of the country, just because I think you may have seen the news, like China, they've been constantly limiting like withdrawals. So if I think there's a limit on the USD withdrawal right now to like something below $5,000.
Yeah, I think it went down to like $3,000, which is crazy. You're only allowed to go and get $3,000 at the exchange. It's nuts. And that's for the fiat world, right? That's not, we're not talking about the crypto exchanges, because those are shut down basically.
Yeah, there is no legitimate like fiat exchange, like fiat to crypto exchange in China, but there is a platform where users can trade peer to peer. So I mean, I think Huobi and OKX both offer this. The exchanges are allowed to do this because they don't actually touch the money, and they're simply providing the tech. That's how they normally put it. I mean, I'm sure they can correct me if I'm wrong, but
it's an interesting thing. So there's a gray zone basically, and until that gray zone gets closed down, they're going to operate in that gray zone for Chinese investors to be able to access cryptos.
Yeah, so I think the government probably uses the flows as a tool. They want to know who the biggest traders are within China. And if they shut it all down, it becomes even more difficult to track this. So I think there's something going on in terms of cooperation to ensure that there's no, they can catch people that are laundering money and doing whatever illicit activities with crypto. But yeah, China is a great demonstration of the current best use case of crypto, which is being able to do cross-border transactions, right? And then on to Korea. Like Korea is, so I'm actually Korean, but I grew up in Hong Kong. I love visiting Korea, like just because it's so different to Hong Kong. People are very passionate about the tech itself, and you can see that with the massive amount of developers that are like full-time in blockchain. You go to those co-working spaces in Korea, it's just like 90% plus. They're all like these projects trying to do Ethereum side chains or like build their own protocol, build dApps. It's a very different vibe. I guess it's closer to what you would see in, I guess, San Fran, and Hong Kong is more like New York. Yeah, you can categorize it that way. But yeah, Korean market, like we saw like the kimchi premium kind of come back in April. But like, everyone knows Korea, like the retail market is very, like they love speculation, they love gambling, they love risk. This is not just for crypto, they love trading penny stocks. It's all about inside info, and yeah, it's that kind of market. So yeah, when the markets are like heating up like right now, you can expect Koreans to be paying a lot of attention.
Sounds like a very exciting scene going on in Korea. I love Korea. It's an amazing country, and it's we see so much innovation coming out of there in terms of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency technology. It's kind of unfortunate that the government has taken an anti-ICO stance. I can only imagine the insanity that would be going on in South Korea if they let ICOs be happening there. But maybe it's, I'm sure they'll get
Yeah, I
around
mean,
to getting it back legalized at some point in the future, but maybe not anytime
yeah,
soon.
Korea, they're quite conservative. They want to follow other countries, so that means they're watching what like the G20 is kind of doing, what US is doing.
Hmm.
Um, so like from a global perspective, like the United States needs to get their stuff together as soon as possible, and kind of set the bar for other nations to follow. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see a lot of other countries innovating. And I'm going to follow up with you on the G20 in just a second, but I wanted to ask you, so you're in Hong Kong. Is there any kind of worry in Hong Kong about sort of the long arm of Beijing implementing some kind of or pushing to have some kind of anti-crypto
Mm.
regulations put in Hong Kong?
So I think the influence is quite limited. Um, I mean, I can't really speak on all issues, but at least for the crypto side, what we've seen so far is the SFC, which is the equivalent to the SEC in the US. They've put out some guidelines, and there's also a sandbox going on
Hmm.
where crypto firms can basically volunteer to be I guess, regulated. I mean, not well, observed by the SFC.
Hmm.
The problem is, once the sandbox is over, I assume the SFC will need to convince like the legislators, which is a different level. And how long that process will take is really like hard to tell. If I had to guess, I would think that it'll be at least another year before we see like firm regulations on these crypto exchanges or trading firms. It's going to be a while.
Now,
Yeah.
the G20 is happening this year in Japan, and Japan has made it known that they will be discussing cryptocurrencies, that it will be a part of the agenda at least. Who knows how much part of the agenda they'll be, but that it will be discussed. So you talk quite a bit about China and Korea, but how much of a focus for you and your customers is Japan? And what do you see as being some potential outcomes of what the G20 might be doing this year in Japan?
Yeah. So Japanese clients, they have one goal, right? And it's because Japan has some ridiculous taxes on the gains regarding cryptocurrencies.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious what they want to do, right? They want to be able to offload the crypto and avoid paying 50%, around 50% taxes on the gains.
that's a lot of tax.
Um, and I heard this from other desks where there's a way to, I guess, you book a loss for end of 18, and then you buy back the crypto immediately. So this was a legitimate strategy that other desks helped with Japanese clients. So just before the end of the year, they book the loss and then they buy it back in. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
but yeah, I mean, in terms of like 2019, besides the guys who are loyal to us, there hasn't been a whole lot of need to trade in Hong Kong.
Hmm.
They probably have their own channels. Japan has very strong like fiat exchanges. Obviously, they're very tightly regulated. Yeah, so more on the G20. To be honest, like I haven't really followed up on what will be discussed, but I assume like everyone's still trying to structure what to do about AML KYC.
Yeah.
Um,
That's it.
and
AML, KYC, and taxes, man. That's what it's all about for those big governments.
yeah, so Japan has been trying to be very influential with the direction of this. I think the key thing to take away from Japan is, their ban on privacy coins.
Hmm.
Um, this is I mean, if this resonates with other nations, and you're holding Zcash or XMR or something, um, it's something to worry about, because if all of a sudden they don't let you list this token on any exchange, poor liquidity equals like a falling price, a massive discount. That's for sure. So like I have some privacy coins, but this is something that I think it makes a lot of sense, right? In terms of like BTC and ETH, there are all these like blockchain analytics firms like Chainalysis, like Elliptic, and they all work with governments. I can say for sure, even in Hong Kong, the police department we've spoken to several times, they have access to these tools now, and they're looking out for kind of shady activity.
Hmm.
But it doesn't work for privacy coins, right? So I think everyone will have the same mentality of kind of disallowing tokens that cannot be tracked. Yeah.
It'll be very interesting when we see, because obviously Ethereum implemented ZK snarks last year, and they did it in a way that wasn't necessarily focused on privacy. They haven't done, they kind of like, oh, we're going to do ZK snarks, and now they're looking at,
Yeah.
well, let's do transaction batching and stuff like this. But the reality is if something like Ethereum or any of the other big players bring very strong privacy into their cryptocurrency, I think that's going to have some very far-reaching implications too, in terms of, well, if governments are coming out against privacy coins, well, where's that put Ethereum as an example?
Yeah. So I think Ethereum, I mean, if they do implement it, it'll just be for, I think their proofs will be a lot lighter, right? There's something about um, making sure that every transaction has like smaller data packets. I think that was the
Yeah,
angle.
that's the
Yeah.
idea right now, is actually using ZK Snarks technology, not for the privacy focus, but actually for having more transactions per second. But
Yeah.
it's there whether we
Yeah.
see it get implemented or not.
Yeah. So I mean, like since you brought up some like technological developments, seems like a lot of interest um, around what's actually going on in tech is not like hot anymore. Um, because yeah, I mean, quite frankly, like everyone did a lot of reading during the ICO boom, and now that that's over, everyone's kind of lost interest in content, right?
Yeah.
It's all about market issues and speculation. Um, so yeah, I mean, like I think
So funny how it
hopefully
all
hopefully your
moves.
viewers hopefully your viewers are diligent readers and interested in like what's actually changing in terms of innovation. But yeah.
Now, final question for you for today. So we're here, almost halfway through the year. What do you see rolling out for the rest of 2019? What do you think might be some of the big trends that we're going to see for the rest of the year, and how the markets might perform during the rest of the year? A very speculative question, of course, but just what are your kind of thoughts on it? Where do you see it going?
Um, yeah, I mean, I always thought 2019 would be kind of a quiet year for crypto. Um, I mean, I know like, going up to 6K feels like a big move, but compared to,
We're still down
the activity in
14.
17, the activity in 18, it's really not comparable.
Hmm.
So I think much more of the same. We'll see more like kind of institution ready products hit the market. Um, and ETFs is definitely something that could be happening soon. Um, but again, it's the same thing. Like, just because there's an ETF doesn't mean we're going to the moon. Um, like, you need a lot of idiots for that to happen, right? Or just massive manipulation, right? So I'm quite bullish for at least the summer.
Hmm.
I think there's been plenty of commentary on what's happening in mining. Everyone is kind of loading up on rigs and trying to take advantage of cheap electricity in the summer. I'm talking about China.
Hmm.
It's always important to be watching the trends in terms of what the big players are doing. What creates the best scenario for them. So in the case I mentioned about Fidelity, it's the best interest for their clients for BTC to be cheap, right? And if you look at the mining side, they want prices to be very high, just to maximize their margins. So these are the things that you kind of have to think about in a market that is only less than $300 billion in market cap. It doesn't take many players to push it whatever direction. So I guess for your viewers and like individual traders, like there's only so much you can do in terms of getting it right. I can say for sure, like I sold yesterday morning a little bit, just thinking that the Binance FUD would continue.
Hmm.
I was dead wrong, and yeah, I had to
It happens.
take a loss,
Yeah.
right? So it's like it's part of being in crypto. If you can't handle that, then you shouldn't be trading that often. Just accumulate whatever token you like. But yeah, I think it'll be more of the same for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to see how 2019 plays out. I mean, it's been a very exciting start of the year this year. I mean, from people saying we're going down to $1,000 to, well, now we're actually back up at six, and hey, look, black swan events can still happen,
Mm.
all that stuff. I feel like we are at least seeing a reinvigoration of the crypto economy. We are seeing more of
Mm.
a healthy market coming back. But I think you made a great point where it's like a $300 billion market cap, or I haven't even looked recently, but it's around
Yeah.
there, and it's incredibly small. It's incredibly
Mm.
small compared to basically everything else. You look at the
Yeah.
size of the stock markets and the gold markets and all this stuff, and it's just, we're a baby market still. There's a lot of
Mm.
money to be made in that volatile small market, but it's worth remembering where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome, Charles. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us and sharing some insights about what's going on in East Asia and the markets overall. So thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Hopefully, we can do this again soon.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thanks.